Hello, everyone. So excited to have everyone joining us today. I know it's such a busy time in talent that we really appreciate your taking the time to be with us. I think it'll be great use of our time because we've got a really full agenda sharing some really great insights on hot topics. So really happy to have you today. My name is Andrea Shah. I'm the head of talent strategy and transformation at Eightfold. I came from a 25-year career at American Express. In my last role, I was the head of global talent acquisition, led a transformation initiative for 2 years, implemented Eightfold as part of it, and I loved it so much, was so impressed by its impact that I decided to join Eightfold. And with that, I want to introduce Sona Manzo, who is a fantastic partner of ours. She is a global consulting leader for Deloitte, human capital leadership. Her role is working with many companies to strategize, implement, and optimize solutions across HR. She has built and led many teams focused on both talent acquisition, talent management. I've had the good fortune of working a good amount with Sona, and I can tell you she brings great depth and breadth of experience and knowledge. So we're really lucky and excited to have her here today. Welcome, Sona.
Thank you so much,
And
Andrea.
with
It's a
that,
pleasure to be here.
yeah, no, that's great. With that, I want to kind of really jump in because I think we have a lot we want to cover. So I'll hand it over to you, Sona, to kind of start walking us through some great materials and content.
Absolutely. Well, as Andrea said, we're so excited to be here with you today to share global talent trends and how skills can really power the future for organizations. And like Andrea mentioned, we've connected a lot. We've both been in HR leadership roles and advisory roles. So we'll make this insightful for you today in terms of trends, and then we'll move into how to put this in action. But let's kick off with a little bit of information from a Deloitte perspective. So we've been doing our human capital trends informed by deep research over the last 11 years. And this perspective of social enterprise is really powerful as we think about what has happened in our world as we've been disrupted over the last few years. And really, how can we help organizations shift from surviving to thriving? So we're just going to use some excerpts from this trends and kind of put it in the framework of what we're observing as time goes on. But if you think about this process of disruption, we know that surviving is not enough. How do we get to that thriving mindset? And it's really about looking at it in terms of what we can do to transform our organizations, to use this disruption as a bit of a catalyst. And we see a lot of organizations that are using this time to really reimagine work, thinking about not only what's possible and how to succeed and address the challenges of today, but really putting the framework in not only thriving, but how do we dominate for tomorrow? So as part of this strategy, we really wanted to understand what were the key characteristics of organizations and how can we shift from the survive to thrive mentality. And so part of this research, you can see a very broad set of business and HR leaders across the globe. And we were really looking at how are they understanding the challenges and looking to disrupt and navigate this future. What did this look like? As we said, a pretty strong set of input that was a part of this research. One of the fascinating pieces of this, for the first time in 11 years, we had more business executives engaging than we had HR. And it just goes to show how talent and workforce challenges are top of mind. So what are some of the key things that executives say are challenges and what they're trying to do in terms of navigating this future? Well, certainly top priorities around people, and that's no surprise, right? As we look at the equation of what's the makeup of our workforce, what sort of skills do they have, how can we really be more agile and adapt to the changes that we need to be able to address our needs today and thrive in the future. And then secondly, what is our ability as an organization to really start thinking about how we manage work in a way that facilitates more rapid decision making? So with this top priority, only 17% felt they're really ready. And on the second priority, only 25%. So there's a big disconnect in terms of where organizations know they need to go and their concept or belief in where they are as organizational readiness. So when we think about it from a Deloitte perspective, this whole concept of a social enterprise, we really want to make sure that we're focusing on how we harness our distinctly human capabilities. And there's been, this yin and yang over the years of where does technology fit and can we remain distinctly human as we continue to infuse technology. And so we really believe, through purpose, potential, and perspective weaving together, we can innately weave in our human capabilities and truly leverage our capabilities through the intersectionality with technology. So let's kind of take that to the next level. When we think about humanizing work through potential, again, really thinking about moving on beyond what we have traditionally thought as role descriptions and being bound by those organizational orthodoxies that we've typically held, by really thinking about how we can start unlocking potential for individuals through better understanding of skills and how we can help individuals and organizations harness those skills and continue to grow those skills and understand what the skills of the future will be required. We are therefore able to, start gaining those efficiencies and speed and agility that we need. So I think this is a very powerful statement when we think about potential and how do we harness this concept of super teams. So essentially, as we bring together humans with technology and form these super teams, we know that getting that right skill set to the table really is powerful a concept. And certainly we've seen the impact on that as we have organizations who've worked so hard to be addressing the challenges of our time. So this concept of super teams, we think about it as where the work really happens. And we've seen that over time, the trend of adopting more technology. But how can we really change the mindset and start thinking about reimagining and re-architecting work by truly taking advantage of the super teams concept? As we can see, as executives are starting to shift their focus towards this reimagined process, we need to be able to set the stage for what that actually means and how we can activate it in our organizations. So we looked at some of these trends that came across in our work in the study, and certainly, building organizational culture is critical. The workforce capabilities, again, focusing back on the skills and the insights that we need, and the leverage of technology that helps bring those together, truly will help us start harnessing that human and machine working together for the impact we need. So what is it that we can learn from that, and how do you start infusing that into your organization? So we know there's great promise in doing this, really, and unlocking the value to all the stakeholders across the organization. So certainly some themes here about thinking about the creation of cross-organizational imperatives to look at how this can be woven in. And human capital can certainly take a key role in bringing this forward. So how we can transform and elevate the impact that it has on our ability, again, to build these strategies. So the second part of potential that we explored was really beyond reskilling. And, we've been having a dialogue for quite some time in regards to upskilling and reskilling. It's still, really important concepts. So what can we do to better put the framework in to help us understand and address the disruptions of transforming work as it comes through? We know that, again, from the research that there's a big gap in terms of being ready to adapt, reskill, and assume these new roles. So we'll talk a little bit about how understanding workforce potential, and as we get into the next section, what we can do to address these challenges. But ultimately, creating a workforce planning and the potential to really start enabling our workforce to have more agency and understanding of the opportunities in our organization. One of the things we know this can do is not only address our ability to get the work done, but in light of the great resignation, or the great quit, as I've heard it termed lately, this isn't an ability for us to start thinking about how can we truly start building the culture of retention, where we unlock the ability for people to certainly, achieve their own potential within the framework of our organizations and start to lock in those capabilities. One of the things that we've seen over time as organizations start to adapt and infuse technology and, update their strategies, their policies, and their process to capitalize on these components, that it truly is a culture-changing opportunity. So it's important to think about the change management aspect and the aspects to enable this, and drive those through with our plans for strategically unleashing this potential. So what are some of those recommendations? Again, I think this sets up the tone really well as we lead into this next section. So talent ecosystems is such a great concept and topic of conversation. As we start to break down some of the silos that we've traditionally had in our organizations, where we've thought about bringing a workforce in, the talent acquisition equation, working with our internal talent pools and working on retention and mobility. And then what is that contingent or alternative workforce aspect that's important to our organization? Those often have been pretty disparate processes and really difficult for organizations to get true understanding of what the talent equation is. And so as we think about translating into action, we really need to understand both short and long-term aspects of that broader talent ecosystem equation. So let's, shift now into action with those trends in mind, kind of setting the framework. One of the things that we know is that having this skills framework is so important. And for the work that we've been doing around organizational shifts for skills-based organizations, it's really the concept of, at the forefront, making sure that we have the data we need to drive these workforce decisions. And some of the themes that we talked about are certainly, critical in terms of the assessment and the deployment of skills and how that impacts our workforce development overall. So how do we activate that? We think about it from a skills hub perspective. Phyllis, what's your talent philosophy? How can we make sure that we're putting in place a skills framework and some common lexicon that we can all share across the organization? What does the skills framework actually mean, and how will that get infused throughout each of our processes? The data and technology enablers, certainly a key topic for what we'll be focusing on here today. Those deep talent insights and the technology enablers are an instrumental part of the equation to moving to a skills-based strategy. And then, of course, governance, has to underlie all of this. So how are organizations coming together? And you can see on the right-hand side here, these spoke or integration points. So we are, meeting organizations where they are. Everyone is coming at this journey from a different starting point. And today we'll talk a little bit more of some of the key areas that we know are so critical for activating to address our talent needs. And in particular, talent acquisition, where does opportunity marketplace fit into the equation, and diversity, equity, and inclusion as some key points that we can certainly capitalize as we put together these frameworks. So let's delve a little bit further into the opportunity marketplaces component. There's probably a concept that you may be familiar with. You may also know it as talent marketplaces. We've had some deep research over the years with MIT Sloan School of Business and Deloitte working together to really think about what does it mean to truly unlock the talent equation within and more broadly across organizations. So we like to think about this concept as truly an opportunity marketplace. And why is that so critical right now? Well, as we can see, and as we've talked about, the Great Resignation has been a critical aspect for organizations to grapple with. How do we really change that? How do we make sure that we're addressing retention challenges? As we can see here, 40% of employees feel it's easier to get a job outside the organization than with staying within their own organization. So that's an important equation that we need to be addressing. And we can do that through a variety of ways, but certainly giving people the agency and insights into skills, where skills fit into the organization, and opportunity to continue to expand those skills in a way that builds their career is a critical component of that. Employee experience fits right into that equation, right? So we know that there's higher engagement and job satisfaction when those opportunities are transparent and actionable. And then skill building, right? When we try to understand, what's at the root of a lot of this migration that we're seeing of talent, we're certainly seeing from an employee equation that they're concerned with being able to untap the skill building that they need. And from an organizational perspective, looking at how we can power that and invest on that skill performance that aligns with our ability to build the workforce of the future. So just to finalize on this, we really think about it with the workforce, and workplace coming together for an opportunity marketplace, giving this advantage to the professionals for their development, but also really importantly, providing some other aspects of engagement, like mentoring opportunities to engage in gig work, as well as being able to look at their career trajectory and find opportunities for growth. So some really important concepts that come together in opportunity marketplaces. And we'll talk a little bit about how that comes into play with Eightfold. So just to wrap this theme up, when we think about the talent philosophy, really it's placing skills at the center of this value proposition and using these skills as the enabler for our broader workforce ecosystem. We like to think about skills and the value they bring as the red thread through talent management. And we'll highlight that as we go along our journey today. So here we go. Here's our, brought to life a vision of what that could look like with skills at the center. And so when you think of this, thread that goes through it and how technology can enable it, this really kind of speaks to the journey, and starting really at the beginning from a talent acquisition and engagement perspective. How do we build the right talent pools and truly now have the capability to do what we call talent rediscovery? So for many years, we've been in a situation where organizations post positions, we source talent, we select the talent, and then unfortunately, the individuals that have engaged in those opportunities really kind of lose insight into that. What can we do to gain greater traction through candidate relationship management and the development of talent pools? Certainly something we've all been working on for some time. But when we add the skills equation and AI to unlock our understanding of that, that ability to do talent rediscovery is really powerful in changing the game for organizations. And then how do we think about conversational AI that can start providing, again, the super teams concept? So we're enabling individuals as they participate in our talent acquisition activities to get 24/7 capability to understand our organization, get some of their questions answered. And we're seeing, really positive feedback from candidates. In fact, there was an interesting perspective the other day that was shared. The percentage of individuals who actually thank a chatbot at the end of the conversation is pretty significant. So that engagement, where in the past it's been considered, will people want to engage in that conversational AI? We're really seeing that transform conversations and engagement, and in particularly, I think, in the hourly workforce way. But other things that we can do is really thinking about, in addition to leveraging skills and AI to do our matching and really start to accelerate our recruiters' ability to identify top talent. Once we do that, we can also untap other capabilities by using technology to do additional skills assessments or enduring human capabilities assessments, as we at Deloitte like to think about that. So those things can be very powerful. We're seeing, interest in gamified versions and how that is working in the marketplace really come to life. And then again, back to the super teams concept, how can we allow our talent acquisition teams to really start focusing on what is critical, which is that human engagement, building our candidate relationships, and moving through that process. And we can do that by really tapping into things like automation of interview, scheduling, and also supporting candidates and kind of democratizing the ability for them to understand how to engage with us by offering micro-learning capabilities, even right in the interviewing process. And then as we think about the continuation through the life cycle, it's really about, through onboarding, helping people get engaged with our environment. We know in our virtual world how critical that is. And then starting really quickly to help them understand what resources in the organization will enable them to continue to skill build. So we know when someone comes in, there's not 100% match in the skills typically. So what can they start doing immediately that helps them add value and grow into that role? And then from a longer term trajectory, engage in the opportunity marketplaces for mentoring and support, connect in with the learning experience platforms to get additional training, tap into opportunities to work on projects, and ultimately start achieving their ability to move their career in the direction that they want to achieve it, with the ultimate goal of having them not only be retained in our organizations, but serve as champions and helping us spread the word about the value of our organizations and the opportunities that are there. So that I think is a framework, gives us a great position now to go in and let's talk about the platform that Eightfold provides. So Andrea, if I could, as we think about this, start talking about how Eightfold's platform enables our talent ecosystem and these AI-enabled skills strategies, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Sona. So I just want to acknowledge really quickly that it's been an incredible 2 years. And Sona, as I look through kind of the materials, you're kind of teeing up the trends and all the priorities going forward. I just want to recognize how busy it's been for any talent leader and their organizations. One of the things that I think drives that is we've had a lot of pivots over the past 2 years. And a lot of the work and how it's done in HR tends to be very manual, unfortunately. There has not been a lot of solutions to leverage in the past. I think HR has probably been looked as a cost center versus, kind of the impact and revenue that we have on revenue, driving revenue that we actually have. But I think there's a realization amongst the top leaders now that there's a need to do things differently. And so I think it's such an exciting time to be in talent because there is that discussion dialogue going on right now about what can we do and what can we do differently, and the recognition that we need more new technology, we need automation, and we need AI to really kind of help us achieve what we need to achieve. So just seeing all the materials that you're sharing about trends and priorities going forward, I just want to call that out and recognize for many on this call how busy a time it's been for the past 2 years. So with that, I'll quickly shift to talk a little bit about Eightfold. And, as I said, as I implemented and went live with Eightfold, I saw how much the impact was when you have AI specifically related to skills, as Sona was sharing, how much it can impact the end-to-end talent process. So I'm going to spend a quick second. I just want to give you an overview on what exactly Eightfold is. So the starting point with Eightfold is we have over 1.5 billion data sets on skills. So that's about half the world's workforce on skills data. What that means is we see the intelligence on skills, how they relate to jobs, to companies, to geographies, and we also see movement of talent and how talent successfully moves and acquires skills. So that gives us incredible knowledge from the marketplace to help us understand skills and skills potential. So what happens with that intelligence is we work with our customers, we integrate Eightfold into your talent platform. So if it's in recruiting, it's your ATS platform. If it's talent management, it can be an HRIS, a learning platform. And all of that information that you have on whether it's candidates and former applicants or whether it's employees is brought to life. And I talked about earlier the fact that it's hard to leverage today because it's so manual. So for a recruiter to understand where's a great prospect that has applied in the past, they'd have to go to your ATS platform and view all the resumes to try to figure that out. All of a sudden with Eightfold, all that data comes to life and the matching is immediately available for all those skills. Same thing with employees. Employees get the ability to understand very quickly what are requirements for different jobs and where do they match to the best jobs. And so that automation enables so much. And that's kind of what our intelligence platform is about. And if you think about it, the starting point of what you need to build is really what are the skills that you need for certain roles that drive your business success. And when you define that and you can automate it, it enables everything, right? So if you look at the top of this chart, you'll see it applies to your employees. It helps your employees find and develop for their right roles. I'll show a little bit more about how that works. It helps your candidates internally and externally find the right roles for them. I think today they look for roles and it's probably very confusing when you take a look at titles. All of a sudden it becomes transparent and a much richer process to participate in. And it even applies to contingent workers, right? When you bring anybody into the company to work on your business initiatives, understanding the skills you need enables so much. So that's just to set the context on Eightfold and how that works and what we do and why we bring so much value. On to the next.
I think this concept, of really getting to a single pane of glass to understand that the talent that is in the ecosystem that your organization is looking at, that you've invested in developing and bringing that together in this skills and AI-driven model is so powerful for organizations trying to move to the next level. With that in mind, let's kind of shift the conversation and talk a little bit about how do we start looking at skills so that we can be future ready. And I think there's a great story here, Andrea, that you're going to share about the way skills can be unleashed to activate the talent equation.
Yeah. And I just want to say really quickly, I know there's questions that are coming in. I think we're covering a lot of content, so we're going to save time at the end to answer these questions. I see some great questions coming in. So talking about the application of Eightfold, the practical application of it is if you've got skills intelligence, what you're now able to do is you're able to understand the skills you have in your workforce. You're able to envision what skills you need because we've got the intelligence on what is the trends with skills in the marketplace. We can take a look at, the top companies in your industry. We can take a look at kind of the top leading companies for different types of roles. And so that you can envision, like, what are the skills I need, to drive my business success based on where I am and what I'm trying to accomplish. And then develop, right? So if you know what skills you want to build in your organization, and you give your employees the transparency about what skills are required for different roles, all of a sudden they've got the ability to understand how they can develop their skills to move in the direction they want in their career. And that's really powerful. I think that's one of the things we're seeing a lot of feedback on from employees. And then finally find, right? So that's finding the best talent. On this next page, this just gives you an insight. Thanks, Sona. I think there's just a couple more items on the bottom. So this just gives you a view into the skill insights we provide. So this, if you take a look at this is specifically for product manager roles, as an example, because I think it's a very common role. What you're able to see is what are the top skills for product managers. And what you can also see is what are those skills? How do they fit? Are they growing skills? Are they skills that are declining? So you can understand kind of what's happening with the dynamics of the skills needed for the role. In the middle chart, what you can see is what are the skills that are emerging? Like, what are those skills that are growing very quickly? We see a lot happening in terms of digital skills. They're growing and ramping up very quickly, and they're even changing themselves within like a 2 to 4 year period. It's amazing what's happening with skills requirements. And then you can even take a look at best in class companies here. Like, what are the companies that have the top product management roles and what are happening with the skills that they're looking for? So that can help educate you on, okay, have I really thought about this thoroughly in terms of what I need? What are others doing? What are the trends? And what are the skills I want to automate in terms of my requirements for my critical jobs? Sorry, Sona, I think you're muted. I think we can hear you.
Classic. Thank you. Great. Well, with that as setting the stage, then to talk about skills adjacency, which is such an important part of this equation for skills. It's not just enough to understand the skills that an individual has, but as we look at being better prepared for the future, understanding the skills that our organization will need in the future, understanding this linkage to adjacency is really critical. Andrea, do you want to share a little bit more about that topic?
Yeah, so I want to talk about, because we have so much intelligence on skills and we can see the progression of individuals as they acquire skills and move to new roles. And I think of this as kind of part of Eightfold's secret sauce. We actually have the ability to predict potential to learn new skills with like 95% accuracy, because we can see the history of the progression of people through their skills. So this chart shows you on the left, what you see here are, some of the top skills in adjacency, specifically for product manager roles, just keeping with that theme, but this can apply to any role. On the right are adjacent skills. So these are skills that basically, if an employee has these skills, their likelihood to learn the skill in the shaded box is very high. You can see the correlation, between the adjacent skills and the top skills. The power of that right now in the environment that we're in, where we're all kind of fighting for the same skills and talent, is you're able to kind of expand your pool of candidates, whether it's externally or even internally with your employees, pretty substantially. So here you can take a look at product management. If you consider the adjacent skills, your pool of candidates goes up 3.3 times. You can look at project management. If you consider the adjacent skills, your pool of candidates goes up 4.3 times. And so what I think is really exciting about that is, and we're talking to a lot of our customers, they're really leveraging adjacencies very heavily now in the environment that we're in. If you look at your employees, you're also, moving them to new roles based on their ability to learn and their potential. I think that's a really exciting idea for anybody that's an employee.
It is, and it also means that as we think back to some of those trends that we were sharing about how organizations can really, address the disruption, that it allows us to start thinking about and planning for that. Or if we're faced with something unexpected, we have the insights to get in and start mapping that out, to address our current state. It also has an implication in terms of how we address diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that would be an interesting thing for us to explore next.
Sorry, Sona, I'm just seeing a couple comments saying that they're not able to see the slides as we're advancing them. I just want to check in maybe with our production team. Are we good? Okay, looks like we're good. Okay. So talking about adjacencies and how it applies to diversity. So you can imagine as you kind of expand your skill requirements to adjacencies, it impacts kind of the candidate pool you're looking at, and we've seen it have an impact on the diversity of your talent. So for example, here, if you look on this page, right, you're taking a look at if you have a skill requirement of business development and you want to fill your role and you want to create diversity, and let's say you're looking for more female talent to fill that role, what you can see is that if you consider strategic planning experience, which is an adjacency to business development, you're able to increase your pool of female talents 2 times, right? So it gives you a much stronger ability to find diverse talent if you just kind of consider broadening the scope of skills that you're looking at. And you can look at adjacent skills, which basically suggests they have a very strong ability to learn the skill, that you're looking for as a requirement for that role. So adjacencies can be very powerful from the standpoint of growing inclusion and diversity.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that is really kind of a use case in the marketplace that has been fascinating to watch is organizations starting to look at this, understand how attrition is impacting their organization, and then using these insights to start changing that dialogue with individuals. So maybe it's, frontline customer service representatives who are, as we know, can be very high volume, high turnover. But there can be some strong adjacencies with other roles that are highly valued in the organization. So by highlighting that and providing insight into that, doesn't only impact our ability to retain those individuals and help chart their course and fill our talent needs, but can certainly change the message in the marketplace and start talking about from an employee value proposition, great place to start your career, and here's where you would be able to navigate and stay with the organization to grow. And I think that's what this next framework, talks a little bit about, Andrea, in terms of how the solution can be utilized to do that.
Yeah, I just want to stick with the kind of the diversity for 1 second, because we've had some phenomenal results, leveraging Eightfold for these adjacencies and kind of the end-to-end recruiting process and talent management process. But on average, across our entire customer base, we're seeing 145% increase. Again, this is on average, so I'm not sharing like the highlights of the best. This is on average, 145% increase in female hires. And then for underrepresented minorities, we're seeing a 190% increase on average across all of our customers. So I think the ability to leverage adjacencies and the end-to-end, skill insights and really basing your hiring and movement decisions and development decisions on skills is really powerful from the standpoint of diversity.
Absolutely. And speaking of diversity, there's so much to unpack in that equation. Some of those statistics that you were just sharing, in regards to engagement and the number of candidates coming through. This is talking about adjacencies, but one of the other pieces that I'd like to highlight is this whole concept of explainable AI. And I know with some of the customers that we've been jointly working with, really powerful part of the story is that as individuals come out and are exploring the opportunities, it's a completely different modality. So we're taking away what we have typically seen as doing, keyword searching or using filters, and truly turning that equation around in a different way. So find your next job capability really taps into the eightfold AI matching and allows the candidate to transparently see how closely their skills match with what the position is looking for. And that, I think, Andrea, is kind of the secret sauce, right, behind some of those statistics that you shared about the number of candidates and that flow through in terms of hires. So absolutely an important part of the equation there.
Yeah. I think the next page just shows a little bit, just a view on what employees can see. So if we want to look at the next page, this is what employees are able to see. Like, okay, this is my current role and I want to move into a product manager role, here are the skills that are required for me to build and develop, either work on projects, find a mentor, right? Because we have that skill intelligence, other colleagues are able to kind of highlight, like, yes, I'm open to be a mentor. And then, employees are able to find those colleagues that have those skills and able to find mentors really easy in a very transparent way. They can sign up for projects or they can take courses that really kind of move them in a path that gets to their future role. So that transparency is very powerful. If you want to go into just the next page, I want to share this because I think this is really interesting from the standpoint of there's a really important need right now for organizations to be very aware of the skills that they're going to need in the future. What is your future ready workforce going to look like? Technology and digitization of everything, every function actually, is playing a big role in this. And that's why the competition for talent is so fierce, because everybody's competing for the same skills. I want to share this view because I think this is really powerful of taking a look at different roles in the company. Here's an example from the semiconductor industry of taking like a manufacturing technician, which is a role that's declining. Look at the reliability engineer role, which is a role that is growing quickly. What Eightfold is able to do is identify those roles that have huge overlap. And so you can see here roles that are direct skill overlaps, roles that are skills that are related skill overlaps. That show the ability to transition people from roles that are declining and prepare them for new emerging roles. That is very powerful to me of kind of really helping your workforce, engaging them, helping build their skill set so they're ready and relevant for the future and also meeting the company's needs. It's like a win-win-win for all parties. So I want to share with this view on kind of the power of skill insights and that intelligence and what it can do, even to prepare for the bigger, workforce readiness. Do you have the right skills in your organization?
That's really insightful, Andrea. And I think there's another twist on this as well, that is powering some of the work that's being done to support the 110 initiative. And for those of you that may not be familiar with 110, consortium of over 50 organizations that have come together to provide family-sustaining careers for Black Americans, 1 million jobs over the next 10 years. And Eightfold is powering that equation. And through our alliance with Eightfold, we're involved in helping ensure as organizations are onboarded, they understand the true value and how to activate that. And there are three parts to that equation, right? The candidate side, the employer side, and then the talent developer side. And so I think it's an interesting, component of the equation here, Andrea, when we look at this upskilling and reskilling, the ability for these talent developers working out in the communities to help activate and provide opportunities for individuals to start to gain skills and then match them with opportunities through the platform is a kind of a core part of the offering as well. Well, let's kind of pivot and talk about, other aspects that we can gain in terms of the insights. And certainly a geographical perspective is one of those attributes as we start looking at how we fulfill our positions and the migration of talent as individuals have certainly moved around during this time. So, maybe just a little bit as we continue this framework of product management and the cross-functional components that come to light.
Great. So this is very relevant, right? As many companies are thinking about, virtual roles or having roles, required in a certain geography. This is a great view on just understanding, where do you find certain skills? So going back to product management, some of the skills there for that role, cross-functional team leadership, project management, and product management. This is an interesting view on kind of the location of these skills by different states. So I think what's interesting to me that popped out is product management is more prevalent in California and project management is more prevalent in New York, in the state of New York. I'm not sure why that is, but anyway, you can get insights and intelligence as you're thinking about like where do I want to have these roles, establish these roles, or create any hubs, or have the role be virtual, which actually on the next page shows.
Right. That virtual aspect is now so critical.
Yeah. So if you take a look, as an example, Texas, which is such a big state, if you look at product managers and look for that skill and the prevalence in Texas, and you compare it to kind of across the U.S., you can increase your pool of talent that are strongly matched to 15 times. So these are great. This is great intelligence, right? If you're trying to really figure out and make decisions around talent and the location in virtual or in a specific location.
So insightful for so many reasons, but we were working with one organization who had traditionally not had a problem filling roles in their area. But with the change in virtual work, all of a sudden the competition for talent in their direct area was completely transformed. And so being able to gain insights like this in terms of what they should be thinking about and what other strategies they could start to put in place to address, the change in talent availability in their market was really insightful for them.
Yeah.
Well, I know there are a few other things, like when we're kind of looking at this map, one of the things that comes to mind is, we've been talking a lot about enterprise approach, but certainly really impactful as well from a state perspective and addressing, the unemployment and underemployment equation. And Andrea, I know that, as part of the Eightfold product suite, you have a state offering as well. Love to hear a little bit about that and how that's transforming the dialogue at the state level.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. So we're also working, as Sona said, with several states like Indiana and New York State and other government entities too, to help, from the supply side, make sure that connection point is happening. And so for the state of Indiana, they've leveraged Eightfold to help their unemployed population find roles more easily, to get the transparency for jobs that are out there and roles that they would fit, which I think is brilliant. It's actually bringing together two very important parties, those that kind of at the state level can help find individuals and help individuals that are looking for roles, and the many companies that are looking to fill those roles. There's definitely a big need right now. We're also working with Department of Labor on veterans and helping veterans as they roll off of their assignments to find, jobs in the public sector. So it's really exciting, to be able to kind of play an important role in kind of bringing that match together of, individuals and the need to find jobs, and then, corporations or other organizations that are looking to fill jobs. It doesn't have to just be commercial corporation. I think even the nonprofits, a lot of different organizations, healthcare organizations are all kind of customers of ours. So it's a very exciting thing for us.
Fantastic. For us, as we've explored our alliance with Eightfold, the state equation has been really integral to the way we're thinking about addressing collectively, not only this equation that Andrea was talking about in terms of matching talent, but also more broadly, case management is a really important aspect of what states are delivering and how they can ensure that they are leveraging the funding that comes from the federal level to start with not only that matching process and finding people roles, but it also in terms of upskilling and reskilling. So bringing all these aspects together is a really powerful part of the process. Well, we've covered a lot of ground. We're going to circle back on something that we started at the beginning of this section, which was really looking at this, quote, red thread that comes through. And we just wanted to layer a little bit in here in terms of enabling technologies. Obviously, you can see, Eightfold plays an incredible role in this particular journey map as we talk about enabling everything from the engagement of talent through bringing them through the talent acquisition journey, making sure that they have the opportunity to engage as they become a team member in terms of their upskilling and career development and their mentoring capabilities, and all the way through becoming a champion in the marketplace. I think we had a question about what else helps empower this approach. And earlier, Andrea showed the talent intelligence platform connecting in with different solutions. Here you can see those reflected as an HRIS. So of course, all the major, strategies around Workday, Oracle, SuccessFactors, or those components can also be tapping into an applicant tracking system, best of breeds, kind of enabling and unlocking the capabilities of the talent that has been invested in. And then, the learning experience platforms to help really bring that equation together, identifying opportunities for individuals to engage with learning and kind of that closed loop, if you will, so that we all have an always-on understanding as individuals are continuing to gain their skills through projects, through new roles, through learning. And, again, a really different modality than what we've traditionally seen, which is a lot of focus on self-reporting of skills and maybe some manager validation of skills. But this ability to leverage the AI and this kind of always-on capability really is ensuring that we have, current insights into the skills of our organization. And again, getting our workforce not only ready for today, but, primed and conquering the future. So with that, we'd love to entertain some questions and appreciate the audience participation.
So Sona, I think we have like 45, we have a lot of questions. So I'm going to start going through those. I'll start with some of the more recent ones. So starting with a question on, is the skills geography insights available for US only, or do you have global data? So that's an easy one. I'll answer that. We have global data. I think for the purposes of our session today, we just focused on the US just to kind of be able to tell the story. But yes, the data is available globally. I have a question here on how has your experience combining Eightfold with Workday been? So about 60% of our integrations are with Workday. I think that's probably a statement about kind of Workday and its kind of prevalence for a lot of organizations. We've worked and integrate with Workday. Obviously, we've done it successfully many times. What I'd say is Workday is a really strong platform. What Eightfold does is integrates this intelligence that I just shared with you on skills throughout every step of the process, and really brings some great enhancements to many of those steps and a big impact. So we've had a lot of experience with that. There's a question on change management. Yes, that's a big question. That's a big do. Change management how about change management consultants? Since this HR transformation, new rollouts need a CM component to support the change. How is that changing the organization needs? So I'll leave that with you, Sona.
Yes. So yeah, absolutely. Such an important part of the equation, and that change journey has to start really from the beginning. So one of the powerful parts of our organizations working together is helping set that strategy at the front end, understanding what the stakeholder, personas and needs are, and infusing that change journey throughout. We have seen organizations in the past try to adopt, for example, an opportunity marketplace without changing or evaluating how their current policies and processes might impact that, and have had to reflect back and then modify after launch. So we really need to get that at the front of the equation. We need to understand how we need to transform not only the dialogue within the organization, but some of the long-held orthodoxies, and that might be something like the way we address internal mobility within an organization and transforming that. So we're truly kind of unlocking that as a capability. So absolutely, change management is a huge part of the success factor for this.
Yeah. There's a few questions around skill taxonomy and kind of setting up the framework. I wanted to, how is that done? What's a good practice? Is there a baseline that Eightfold provides? I'm going to just answer that. I'd love you to expand and build on that, Sona. But I had implemented this at American Express. The one thing I found, because it's overwhelming when you think about every role in your company, it can be very overwhelming. And for most companies, it's emerged organically, like bottoms up. And so it's not very clean taxonomy. What I found was the 80-20 rule applies. Like 20% of the roles represent 80% of your hiring. And so there's a great ability to kind of focus in on those key roles. What I'd say is it's you want to tailor your taxonomy to your business objectives. Every company has different objectives in terms of their priorities, where they are, if they're transforming or whether they're more mature in what they're trying to accomplish. And so I think the skills needs differs by the company's priorities. And so I do think a company needs to take a look at that and determine it for themselves. I think that, the marketplace intelligence helps a lot. It helps you really vet with intelligence in a strong way. I also think each individual role with the hiring leader, it's great to give them a baseline, but each hiring leader has nuances to what they're trying to accomplish. So they will need to tailor it, but at least they have a baseline to start off with that's really strong. So that's kind of how I look at skills taxonomy. I know Eightfold has worked with a lot of leaders to really create great skills taxonomies that are really tailored and customized to them. It's definitely something that we've done successfully for many. It's definitely an important first step. Sona?
Yes, absolutely. And when you think about, organizations looking at their job architecture that maybe has been static for some time, and, there's a pendulum that goes back and forth between, how granular or how summarized are we looking at kind of the job and the job architecture, and then how do we connect in with the skills strategy? That is kind of the concept that we are working on with organizations right now. And I think we talked a little bit at the beginning of the dialogue about this becoming a skills-based organization. And we do have a methodology to help organizations think through what's important to them. As Andrea mentioned, kind of meeting you where you are and looking at what exists today, not only, kind of the definition of skills and content of that, but also, what other technologies do you have in play? Where could we mine some of that data? And then the piece of Eightfold that Andrea is talking about, kind of this jobs intelligence engine piece, has been used successfully, and some organizations are going through and, as again, like looking at a component and saying, let's use this to stand up our strategy and start setting the stage for expanding it, and kind of use that as an opportunity to leverage some of the tools and the insights to do that. So absolutely foundational.
Yeah. There's another interesting question too, asking about if a company's already, if someone's already established a library, can that be leveraged for skills matching? And the answer is absolutely. Absolutely, because you can set up your job requirements linked back to kind of that framework that you've already established. What I would say with Eightfold is really helpful is you can continue to be dynamic with it. Again, we're seeing shelf life of skills shorten more and more. I think 5 years is a long time. I'm seeing even some emerging skills like, some of the skills around software engineers, those skills are changing like every 2 years now. It's all emerging very quickly. So I think the benefit of Eightfold is that will be able to be very dynamic with both intelligence and your ability to automate the updates very quickly.
Yes, and I think, one of the things we didn't really talk about was the concept of calibration, right? And the process of using the Eightfold solution to understand, here's the framework of skills for a position. But to your point, with different managers, you may need to fine tune things depending on what the fit is. And so being able to use it as a tool, certainly in talent acquisition for a recruiter and a hiring manager to sit down, look at what skills have been set, and then use this calibration strategy that can also help understand what is the talent pool that's available, and then how to set that strategy for talent acquisition or in terms of internal mobility, all really helpful aspects that I think is a different way of looking at things. So it's no longer static.
Yeah, that's right. I'm looking for additional questions here. Oh, how is an employee's specific skill level qualified beyond self-reporting the skill level? So expert, medium, and low. So Eightfold has the ability for a leader to validate, right, the skill proficiency of their team member. So that's a way. So we have, employees can enter their skills and update their skill profile. Eightfold also has the ability to look at roles they've held in the past and also surface like, hey, you missed this skill. We can see this skill is very common in the roles you've had in the past. It helps it become more thorough. Or there's a question mark, is this skill one that you've really acquired? And we do this for candidates too. Like, here's a skill area that you might want to probe on to validate that it is a skill, because we don't see it in prior roles as a common skill. And then we have leaders. Obviously, leaders should be engaged in this and really validating the skills and skill proficiency of their employees. So yes, that is definitely a input into the skills assessments.
One of the things that comes to mind, about that when we're talking about self-reported versus other ways to look at skills of an individual. Andrew, do you want to talk a minute about the number of sources of external data and how that can be used to do like a talent profile enrichment strategy? So I think that's a really unique aspect of being able to look at information about an individual, whether they're, from a talent acquisition perspective, a talent pool perspective, or an employee, and knowing that we actually have new ways of, understanding what skills they have beyond what they've reported, because we know that often is underreported in some cases or overreported.
Yeah, I think there's so much complexity, right? When you talk about skills, like everybody has different languages or how they reference to probably the same skill sets oftentimes. And sometimes people aren't complete when they think about all their skills, or sometimes people are, when they think about their skills, are exhaustive and maybe not as accurate. So what Eightfold has in our intelligence is the ability to understand skills, because we have so much data. I reference half the world's workforce, because that's the easiest way to understand it. We have so much data. We have the ability to look at different roles, and even the same role title in different companies varies in terms of the skills that you acquire. So we're able to capture all that data, and with that data, we have the ability then to say, this is a skill you want to validate. As I was saying earlier, this is a skill you maybe want to explore, because it's likely that they have the skill, but they haven't listed it, and it's important to your requirements. So that all kind of comes into play to give you the complete picture based on the amount of data that we have, in our database. We have the ability, and that's why we can talk about potential, and proficiency comes into play. I don't know, Sona, is that kind of answer?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to mention the enrichment piece, which is, when we think about other data that's available to us, what people put in GitHub, for example, or what they've loaded on LinkedIn, there's a plethora of information that's available both internal to our organization and publicly available data externally. And so the ability to kind of infuse that into the model and use that as we call it term like enrichment also allows us to see what an individual who may be engaged with us in the past, what has happened, what's transpired in their career since that we've been engaged with them. So a lot of interesting aspects that we can tap into.
So I think
Well,
we're
it
at
looks like we're
yeah, we've got a lot of questions that we didn't get to. I think anyone, if you'd like to, I'm happy to follow up if you want to just kind of pose those questions directly to me or Sona. We'd be happy to kind of follow up. I know that I've loved the engagement in this session. I wish we had like another half hour to talk more. These are great questions. I hope this is really valuable for you. Again, I know how busy everybody is. Appreciate the time that you took to join us today. I hope it added a lot of new information and value to you. And we'll look forward to hopefully talking again sometime near future. And thank you, Sona, for joining us today. Some great insights that you were able to share with us. Thank you.
my pleasure.